Welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure, much gratitude that we welcome Patt from California, who's come to share for around 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for 15 minutes of question and answer session. So Pat, thanks so much for coming. Over to you, brother.
Thank you so much. My name is Pat, and I'm an addict. Hi, Pat. Grateful to be sober, grateful to be here. It's always an honor and a privilege to be asked to do anything in Cocaine Anonymous. Oh, I'm glad there's a timer. I got nervous. I started looking around the hotel room, wondering how am I going to keep track of time because, my favorite topic is me, so I could just keep going and going. And, so that's good. Thank you, Young, for asking me to participate in my recovery. And I'm hoping that the gods see fit that I can get through this whole talk without my service going wonky and getting loose. But my friend Sherri, she said, don't worry, I could step in for you. So there you go. And, one more time, I'm reminded that I'm not really all that big of a deal, even though I think I am in my own head. I'm like over here thinking I'm not good enough, less than, not important. And then Sherri reminds me, she says, yeah, you're not, I'll finish for you. And, so thanks, Sherri. I appreciate your friendship. What topic am I going to talk about? That's a good question. I put it on Facebook to get a group conscious. That was quite interesting. And it all came down to the power of God in my life, and, I was asked to share in a different state. So I took a flight over here. I landed, I did a little conference, and I woke up in the morning on Sunday and there was a blizzard, which I don't know anything about blizzard. I live in the desert. It's hot, and there's a blizzard, and they said, yeah, you're not going to fly out. I'm like, what? I got to get home. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not flying out. You're staying here. And instantly, like, I want to control and manage and figure out how I can make it work. And I stayed on the phone with the airline for 2 hours and then an hour, got cut off both times. And finally, I just said, you know what? I just need to surrender to the fact that obviously God has a purpose for me in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and after that acceptance in that space, it was like everything just went, you know what I mean? Everything's all right. Right here in this moment, right here, right now, everything's all right. And I have a purpose today. And thank God for the fifth tradition that's given me a purpose, to go out into the world and to carry this message. And if you're new, I want to welcome you to Cocaine Anonymous. Cocaine Anonymous is the single most important thing in my life. And you might be asking, what is this message? Well, the 12th step says that we've had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, right? Which were the first 11, right? And that I'm going to try to go out into the world and carry this message. And this message is that Cocaine Anonymous has opened my heart and changed the perspective of my life. Because I learned that when I got here, I have a perception problem. My perception is just a little bit skewed to the reality of what's really going on, right? Like, for example, I'm stuck in a blizzard, and my perception is that, you know what? God always tests me. You know what I mean? God is just testing me. I am being punished, somewhere along the line. I've been a bad boy, and God's over there going, you little rat bastard, you're going to stay in Sioux Falls in a blizzard, and that's just not the reality. You know what I mean? The reality is normal things happen.
Okay, well, we'll see if he comes back. Sherri, alcoholic, everybody. Pat, I see your green square. If you come back, just interrupt me. You know what? The last text I sent him, I said, this is God's meeting. So let's just go with that. That's the deal, man. I know you guys have heard me quite a bit, actually, but that's the thing, and I came here believing in shaming and condemning and punishing God. And, one day someone said to me, your God is too small. And I was like a year-ish sober. And it took me like 2 weeks to ruminate that and to really absorb that, because I never, ever considered that. Oh, I'm an addict, by the way. I never considered that I could have a bigger God. And so what I did was I got on my knees one night and I said to the God that I brought here, I'm sorry, but you're fired. You're just not working for me. I think that you are too small. They said there's a bigger God. And I put my arms open wide while I was still on my knees. And I said, okay, they said there's a bigger God. So I'm asking a universal God who's big enough for me to come into my life and show me evidence. And the thing is that that's what happened from that moment on, is that a bigger God has been in my life. And I have this ever-changing relationship with a never-changing God. Because God was not who I thought God was. You know, the first thing Pat said, which I love because Clancy used to say it, I have a disease of perception, man. So it was my perception of God. It was the religion that I grew up. I grew up Italian Catholic, Italian Irish Catholic. Happy St. Patty's Day, everybody. And isn't it great to be in a meeting of CA and be sober today and be clean today? That's like the best feeling, because man, I went out, you know, there was no trying to have one or two. It was always a party, you know, and the holidays, made it better, made it easier, you know, but it's really good, to be here and to be, you know, sober today. And my friend's birthday today, celebrating 3 years. This is the God I know. I was speaking at a meeting this morning and I went to tell this story, and I was speaking on a meeting on Zoom, and someone had reached out to me, called me after the meeting, and lived in Canada and needed a sponsor. And she was only about 3 weeks sober. And she said, I'd rather have somebody in person. And I said, well, okay. Believe it or not, I know people in Canada. So I have a few people I knew in Canada. And so the first one that I called, I said, hey, man, I got this girl and she lives in Canada and I don't know anything about Canada, but this is where she said she lives. I guess that's a city. So my friend texts me back and she says, no, that's not a city. That's a neighborhood. And I live in that neighborhood. See, that's a bigger God. That's a bigger God. A God who designs plans, because what the big book says is I have little plans and designs. And I love that somebody shared one time about GUS, G-U-S. I kind of just say, hey, Gus, what's up? G-U-S standing for Great Universal Spirit. Great Universal Spirit. That covers a lot, doesn't it? And I talk to God very casually. I was driving from New York to Nashville. And I was going to stop at a hotel and stay over because it's a long drive. And I started calling hotels, you know, on the way so that I could get a hotel for the night. And everybody was booked. And finally, someone told me it's 4th of July weekend, which here in America is, you know, Independence Day. And they were booked. It was very busy. Everybody was out of town and visiting other places. And so I was like, but it's only July 1st. You know, I'm trying to, because that's what I do, right? I'm trying to manipulate her to give me a room when she doesn't have any, you know? And so, the thing is that what I said is, God, I'm giving this to you, this SHIT to you, because I don't know what else to do. But I was tired and it was still like another several hours to Nashville. So 2 hours later, I'm still driving and I got the name of a person, and the name of the person, I used to live next to her and her husband in an apartment complex in Nashville, but I hadn't spoken to them in over a year. But her name came to my mind. And right before I left, they had bought a house. that was beautiful, and she wanted me to come see it, and I went to see it, and the downstairs was a complete separate apartment. And her name came to my heart intuitively. And I called her and I said, you know, that place that you guys had? And she says, I said, is it available for rent? And she said, actually, we've been down there this week getting it ready to rent out. And so I drove straight to their place. I didn't need a hotel. And that's the God of my understanding. That's the higher power. See, because I had a higher power, but it was a lower power. And I've also made people my higher power. And so that's the thing. I've had to get on my knees and fire people too. Because I got to make sure I keep God on top, you know, and if I'm a channel of thy peace, I didn't pray anything about this meeting because I didn't really know. And Young, is this cool with you or do you want to talk? It's okay. Okay. It's God's meeting, man. I was really kind of joking with Pat. I'll be honest with you. I swear I was joking. But here we are. So, you know, that's the thing is like, if I'm going to be a channel of thy peace, I have to keep the channel clear. And that's what the steps are for, you know, and it's kind of like this thing where you know, it's like Pat was saying, I come here low self-esteem. I'm not good enough, pretty enough, skinny enough. That's what I thought all my life. You know what else I thought all my life? No one understands me. They don't get me. And then I got here and every single one of you guys get me. It is profound to be understood. And the thing is that I have to keep the channel clean. And the only way that I can keep the channel clean is by the steps. I do an annual house cleaning. You know, the 12 and 12 talks about a semi-annual or annual house cleaning. Hi. And I do that. Sorry, I just saw someone I love. That's another thing too, man. You know, COVID was really bad and I've had COVID 6 times and I've been really sick with COVID. And I was also working front lines during COVID, as a medical assistant and phlebotomist. And I cried every day and because there was so much fear and I couldn't even find God. There was so much fear and anger because I had to beg people to pull a mask up and I had to, you know, ask them to not cough on me or, you know, when I got close to them and their mask was down on their mouth, but not on their nose and people were dropping dead. And, you know, in New York, they were putting people in frozen meat trucks because they didn't know if they could bury them in the earth. So it was a very scary time. But here comes the big God that I know now, right? Who introduces those of us who didn't know, who introduces us to an online platform that has blown up the program. And today I get to know and love people that I've never met in my life in person. But you know what? This is the fellowship of the Spirit, man. I don't need to know you in person. I know you in my heart. I know you in the fellowship of the Spirit. I love you from the big God that I have. And that's amazing to me because I'll tell you what, I came here and I didn't know how to be loved. You know, and it's funny because Pat talks a lot about this, about he didn't know how to be loved and I didn't know how to be loved and I didn't know how to love someone else either. You know why? Because I don't know how to have relationships because I'm selfish and self-seeking and self-centered. There are only 3 reasons in the entire world that I get disturbed. 1 is because I'm not getting my way. 2 is because I'm not trusting God. And 3 is because I'm not minding my own business. My sponsor is really, really rude. She's really rude. And she says things like, you know, I call her and I'm like, well, she did this and they said that and blah, blah, blah. You know what she says? Well, Sherri, that's none of your business. You know? And I called her one time and I said that I was going through some job stuff. I went through some job stuff after COVID. It was a lot, but we're settling down now. And I called her and I said, I was in a job thing and I said, oh my God, I did this today. And I said that, and this one was on the call and I can't believe I did it. And I think this is going to be the thing they fire me over. You know what she said? She said, well, Sherri, that's none of your business. It's not, is it? It's God's business. If they fire me, it's God's business. Because it's God who will take care of me, because 100% of the time, God has taken care of me and I have made it 100% of the time. Whether I see your face or just your name or nothing, just a black blank little square, 100% of the time you've made it. 100% of the time. That's the God of my understanding today. That no matter what, you know, this morning I couldn't find my scissors and I was cutting the bag of my dog's food, and I was using a knife, and it's knives literally that I just bought. I've had them for like 2 days, and I didn't have my glasses on. So I went to cut the bag and I was using the knife the wrong way and I sliced my finger. And of course that was not pretty or fun and it hurt, but I was about to speak in a meeting. So I just decided, I made a decision that I wasn't going to look at it. I just wrapped it up and I held it like this with a paper towel on it through the whole thing. But it made me think about, I don't want to look at something that's going to freak me out. That's why I didn't look at it, because I'm a drama queen, and because I'm selfish and self-centered, because I have a disease of perception, because I have an internal spiritual malady, because I am spiritually sick, because my brain thinks things that aren't true. So what I thought is, I'm not going to look at it because I don't want to freak out. And I think that's such a good idea. If things are going to enable me to freak out, I probably shouldn't look at them. I should probably mind my own business. And I should probably go help someone else. Because isn't that what this is about? Time with God and helping others, getting clean, feeling free. You know, we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. In the 9-step promises, it says anew. It doesn't say a better version of the old. The very beginning of step 5 in the big book says we're trying to have a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator. A new, not a better version of the old. That's why I got on my knees and fired the God I came here with. Because I made that God in the way that I was, not good enough, not big enough, not effective enough. And then they told me I had old ideas. You know what's interesting is I've been talking a lot, and not just me, I mean, it's been talked a lot about the last few meetings I've been to, how it works. And it says, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough. It's like, because that was what the first 100 did, you know, and there were so many more that didn't, that they were at a place of desperation and they said, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough. You know, and we don't ask anybody to believe in a particular God. We just ask you to believe it's not you. Talk about all inclusive, right? Talk about we are people who normally wouldn't mix, but there is a fellowship among us, right? There is an understanding, and that's all I wanted all my life. You know, I came here, self-loathing, self-hatred, low self-esteem, you know, looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for a lot of love in all the wrong places. And I came here calling myself names because of that. My mom called me a fat pig and a piece of shit all my life. And I believed her. That's how I came here. And I came here with suicide attempts. And and lockdown and psych wards. And, I was a, you know, husband stealer. because none of that mattered to me. I just needed attention. I just needed to be loved. And I've come to learn that it's normal to be loved, just not by someone else's husband. Which I never was anyway. Let's face that. But the thing is that we all want to be loved, and we all want, and the thing is about all that self-esteem, self-loathing, all that. I don't want self-esteem. I don't want self-confidence. I have Godfidence today. Somebody posted something today on Facebook about being single, and it's like, you meet someone who's single and then you find out why they're single. And what I put on there was, I haven't met anybody who deserves me yet. Today I believe that. And it's not egotistical. I believe it because when the person who comes around that deserves me, and when I close the wall, when I let down the walls of fear, because I'm afraid, because if I let you love me, you could hurt me, right? You could leave me. That's the biggest, right? You could leave me. And so it was many, many years later that I realized that I didn't want to die in those suicide attempts, that I wanted to live. I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. I wanted to learn how to live through the pain. I wanted to learn how to live and stay clean and sober no matter what. And I didn't know how to do that. They call the book a design for living. It doesn't say a design for not using. And the reason that I used so much and for so many years, because I didn't know how to live. I didn't know what spiritual principles were. Oh, and gosh, I get here, and honesty. I mean, even honesty, something as simple as honesty, thinking about it as a spiritual principle, because I think that honesty is just don't lie, but it's not that. Honesty means tell the truth, tell on myself. That's what honesty is for me. It's not just don't lie, which I still do sometimes. Because I'm not cured. I don't get to graduate. All I know is it works. And there is a promise here in speaking again about how it works. Oh, and it's how it works, not how it feels. I went to an in-person meeting on Monday night because my sponsor wants me to go to an in-person meeting because she's rude, remember? Because she says, Sherri, because you don't know how to have relationships. And while you have beautiful relationships over Zoom, you need to still learn how to have relationships with people in person. And so I get to practice and I get to practice with people in the rooms. And so there's a promise in here. The promises are not just in the 9th step. They're everywhere in this book. And here's a promise, excuse me. People who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program do not recover. And the program then says later on the next page, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. And when people say, I'm lit, and I'm not judging anybody, I'm saying for me, people say I live in 10, 11, and 12, and it makes me cringe because I would probably not be, well, I wasn't supposed to be your speaker today anyway, but, I would probably not even be here if I lived in 10, 11, and 12. And I'll tell you why, because the powerlessness of step 1 is something that I forget very often. And I'm not powerless over people, places, and things. Let me clear that up. I'm powerless over my spiritual malady. I'm powerless over my ism. I'm powerless over my ism and what it thinks about people, places, and things. Because here's the thing. I never had power over anybody anyway. I just thought I did. And it was exhausting. I remember, and I've been raised by old timers, and though I only have 24 years sober, I have a big old timer's heart, man. Shut up and get in the car. Shut up and sit down, because I didn't listen. I was a sarcastic know-it-all. And I just ran my mouth, and I wanted to be seen, and I wanted to be heard, and I wanted to fit in, and I wanted to belong. And so I just was like, rah, 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 rah. You know, I was here as keep your shit together, Sherri. Oops, S-H-I-T. That's how I felt. I didn't want anybody to know I was hurting. I didn't want anybody to know I was sick. I wanted you to think I had it all together. And I didn't. And you know and I've told people, there's people, you ask, I've told people, stop talking. I have said shut up, but it's in a very loving way. I swear to God, it's people who know me and they understand, because I can get caught in that chatter, but peace is still, man. Do I want to be a channel of thy peace? Peace is still. So if I'm going to be a channel of thy peace, I have to be still. I can't have all that chatter going on. Well, I can, but then I get exhausted. That's what I ask a lot of people when they call, naming all these things that's going on, and they just brrr. I just say, aren't you tired? And that's what I was going to say about my old sponsor, because he said to me, he said this and she did that and the doctor said this and they did that and they forgot my birthday and they recognize everybody's birthdays here and they didn't even acknowledge mine. And I started crying and I said, I'm just so exhausted. And he said, well, kid, you're exhausted because self wears you out. When I was moving from one place to another in New York, just, from apartment to apartment or whatever, my cousin had died of COVID and I, had to get out of his apartment. He was leasing his apartment to me. And I got really, really coming in hot, angry, cussing. Every other word was not a friendly word. And it wasn't even my sponsor. My sponsor was not available. So I called one of my sobriety sisters and I said, they're not even offering to help me move. They know I have to move. They know I got all this stuff in here. They know I got to clean it before I leave. Blah. They're not offering to help. And I was cussing and he said this and she did that. And she's, and I was calling them names and I was so angry. And I said, and I moved up here and they're not even going to help me move. And you know what she said? They don't have to. Sometimes I let somebody off the hook because I don't have a hook. And I have no power over anybody. I can't make anybody do anything, nor do I want to. If it ain't fun, don't do it. And moving is not fun. And you know what? Same thing I said earlier, 100% of the time, every time I've moved, I've always had help. God's taken care of me every single time. But see, what happened was I was trying to figure out the move. Who was going to help me? What truck we were going to use? Who was going to carry this? Who was going to carry that? Who was going to stay behind and do this? One time I hired movers and I had bought beer and I was going to get pizza for all the people who were coming over to help me move and they didn't show up. And so the movers stole the beer, which was fine. I'm sober, right? But I was like, but it was people in the apartment complex and, they drank. And so I just was like, that was going to be my thank you. But, that's the thing, man, is that, God always figures it out and I don't have to. And when I try to figure everything out, when I try to write pros and cons lists or do all the things, I just get tired. A friend of mine, said in a meeting, whatever day it was, a couple days ago, he said, how much time am I spending with God? 'Cause that's a relationship. And he said, guys, if you don't spend time with your girlfriend, how does she feel about it? And I was like, So I texted him yesterday and I wrote the little quote, how much time are you spending with God? And I put his name with it like it was an official quote, because that really made me think. You see, meditation helps me. It helps me with the peace is still part. It helps me so much I stopped doing it. And that's why I need the deal, because I have to be reminded that I do have to do these things, And on the peaceful side, though, it is an action program. And on the peaceful side, I have to also remember that surrender is an action. And that waiting is an action. Step 2 for me, the most important thing I've learned about step 2 is that belief is not reliance. I believed in God my whole life, but I did not rely on God. Another reason I had to get on my knees and fire the God I came here with, because I didn't trust the God that I came here with. And I definitely did not think the God that I came here with had anything for me. You, Almighty, all-knowing, all-powerful, omnipotent, unfathomable, for you, but not for me. But that was because I didn't love myself. That had nothing to do with God. It was my perception. And so belief is not reliance for me. The thing is that when I take step 3 and I give things to God, I have to then back off. I have to back the F off, because why would I give things to God if I'm still going to try to figure it out? The money, the numbers, calculating, what's this? I got to pay this. I got to do that. I got to figure this out. And I don't, because the answers will come if your own house is in order. That's why I have to keep my house in order. That's why I have to widen the channel. Because I'm here to help God and the people about me. People I sponsor sometimes will call and they'll say, oh, well, I thought you might be busy, or I thought, I work 2 jobs and I have a giant dog that likes to be walked 4 times a day. I try to also have a life doing other things, and I have a recovery program. And people say, oh, I thought you might be busy, or I thought you might be working this other job, or da-da-da-da. And I said, you know what? That's none of your business. I love saying that. I love saying that to people. Because it's so true, man. It's such a relief to get in there, up in there, and just to have someone say, it's none of your business. It's like, oh yeah, that's God's business. And so I tell people that's none of your business what I'm doing or not doing. God owns my time. God owns my day. Some days everybody I sponsor calls. Some days nobody calls. Some days it's one. But see, God figures it out. Just like this meeting, man. I don't know who, I don't know what, I don't know when. But you know what? It's just the way it's supposed to be. And I'm not saying that because somebody was supposed to hear me because I'm wonderful. I'm saying somebody was supposed to hear me because God wants you to hear God. I wasn't asked to speak at this meeting, but I was asked to speak at an earlier meeting. And the only thing that I ever say is, God, empty me of me and fill me with thee. And I swear to you, I'm not joking when I said to Pat, I'll jump in for you. And I was kidding, because he was worried, and I was just trying to, lighten him up a little bit because he's in a blizzard and the service is spotty. But I know that this was meant, because this is the God of my understanding today. I got to share a meeting platform with someone I sponsor. And that's never happened for me before. It was not that long ago, and it's never happened for me before. And I tell you this because I want to tell you the plan. So the plan was there were 2 speakers scheduled, and I was not one of them. One of them bounced off because they had something else going on. And so there was another one chosen. And so it was those 2 speakers, and I still was not one of them. And then that one also couldn't be at that meeting. And then it turned out it was me. And I guess at that time I was I guess I had already turned 24 years sober, maybe I was 23, I don't know. But at that time, in all those years, I had never been on a meeting with a sponsee. I've never shared a meeting platform with a sponsee because you usually don't have two speakers. And what a cool experience, right? A new experience. See, new experiences, not a better version of the old. We didn't plan that. That was ordained, and it was so cool, man. And we both said to each other, oh, I don't even know if we're going to be able to say anything different. And I was like, well, then for 1 hour, they'll get both of us, And then, I was invited somewhere, and, somewhere I've never been before. And I said, sure, let me look at my calendar. And I gave her the date that I was available. And, she said, great. And she said, oh, by the way, it's a double speaker. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Well, the speaker is Scott L. I know some of you guys know him. And as it turns out, I'm back in New York. I moved back to New York, but I was in Nashville and I got sober in Nashville. And I always say I was raised by Scott because we shared the same home group and we also shared the same sponsor for a while. And I just think it's so cool how now I'm in New York and he's still in Nashville, and then we're arranged to share at a meeting together. These are the plans that God has, man. I just think it's so cool. I had to text him immediately. You're not going to believe this. Because the person who invited me, I don't even know her, to be honest. I don't know if she was at a meeting that I was on or something or whatever, but she definitely didn't connect Scott and I, because I think my little square says, New York or whatever now. But I just think God is so cool, man. God is so cool. And that's why I like Gus, GUS, Great Universal Spirit. I like that because I just sometimes say, hey, Gus, what's up? Just to make conscious contact, And I want to say just a couple things real quick since I kind of was talking about the steps. The inventory process is paperwork. We make too hard of terms. And the inventory process is just paperwork. When we write it down, we're supposed to write it down. When it says pray, we're supposed to pray. When it says do this, we're supposed to do that. It's paperwork. And then step 5, your sponsor helps you finish the paperwork. And I want to talk about step 5 because that's where it said we're trying to get a new attitude. My attitude sucked. I called my sponsor. I was so excited because I had this revelation. This was just a few years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, we're living the St. Francis prayer. We are in meetings and we are love, comfort, and understanding each other. And you know what she said? We hug each other when we're sad or whatever, right? We crosstalk when we're not supposed to. We call each other after meetings and check on each other. I said, we're living the St. Francis prayer. And she said, it's an attitude, Sherri. Oh my God, why does she have to be so rude? Because you see, my attitude wasn't one of love, comfort, and understanding when I went to work. My attitude wasn't one of love, comfort, and understanding when I was driving in traffic and some idiot pulled out in front of me. So it is about a new attitude. And step 5 for me, when I gave my very first 5th step, their face didn't move. And no one's face has moved ever since. And the thing is that what it means for me when someone's face doesn't move is that I'm not as bad as I thought I was. And 6 and 7 are God's job, guys. It says I had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them. It doesn't say I would not. It says I could not. If I could be a better person, if I could be better, have better, do better, live better, I wouldn't know you. But I don't have willpower over that either. because that is a symptom of my disease. This disease was meant to kill me. This program, this book, these steps are meant to save me. And God is meant to help others through me. Thank you so much for your time and attention, guys.
Alcoholic, Andrew, an addict. I think that award music is for you, Sherri. I was just lamenting and sending out information to Scott Lee and everybody, and I think Young, how I don't hear in the rooms the message that you delivered today. I don't hear in the rooms, exactly precisely this. Alcoholic Andrew, chronic hopeless drunk addict, delusional perception at a drop of a hat, recovered. So my question, and thank you, Young, for this. My question is very specific. You started off with, I remember the lines in the big book, the thought came, and then you immediately switched to something like, patience and wait, it dawned on me. Those weren't your words, but that's what I got. Can you give another example of something life-saving where it dawned on you?
I don't have anything at this time. I reserve the right to come back because I don't want to waste the time. But as for another example, not right this second, what I know for sure is that the cleaner my house gets, the more intuitive I am. I constantly have people, my own sponsor, and people that I sponsor, or people that I don't, people that I just know, and I will text them, and they will say, "I was just thinking of you," or I don't know. I think this is a good idea. I think, I think that I hope that everyone can understand this is not my ego. This is me saying that God works like this. Today, suddenly the thought came to my mind that if Pat, he was texting me, and if he lost service, a thought came to my mind to joke with him about that. But here we are, right? And so I think that, is life-changing, just to do what you feel led and inspired to do, because if they call it a hunch, or, the book calls it a hunch or an occasional inspiration, I have to follow that because I know the voice of God today. And it's not, "You're a fat pig and a piece of crap," like my mom used to say every day. And it's not, "You're a slut because you've stolen husbands and because you've cheated and, helped husbands cheat," or whatever. It's not that. Those things are not the voice of God, And so I think that even that was an intuitive thought to say that to Pat, Thank you. Thanks for the question, Andrew. Thanks for your share.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, Olivia. Hi, Liv. Come on in.
Thanks, Young. Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia. I'm an addict. Sherri, oh my God, amazing. I just love you so much. When just to back up that claim there as well, I've never met a more intuitive person in my life. Like, there is times when we speak and I am like, has this woman got cameras in my house right now? Like, does she just know what is going on in my life? But, it's because God is there. But my question for you is, you always tell us about belief and not reliance, and how step 2 showed you that. And I just want to question, really, how do you get from the stage of when you're in belief into reliance? What is the practices that you use to move from belief back into reliance when you're in that situation? And thank you again for your share. I love you a lot.
Thank you. I love you. For me, the belief is not reliance, and the action is surrender. I have to surrender. I can believe in God all day, but am I relying on God with this decision? Am I relying on God with that job? Am I, And recently I've had someone who's kind of indecision about a job, whether to take a job that's been offered and already has a job. And, my old sponsor did this for me, and he said it was the sponsor that Scott and I shared. We called him Ice Cream Steve. And he was a lovely man, and he was someone who, I don't use the word, I've used the word jolly twice in my life, and he was one of the men who was jolly, and he had a great story and was just such a beautiful spiritual being. But he did this for me once, and he said, well, listen, kid, we'll do this. He says, today is March 17th. Why don't you not think about it again until March 25th and give God room to work? And see, that's just a practice. This is about practice. I have to practice these principles. And that's practicing the principle of surrender. The book talks about fear, FEAR. For me, my favorite acronym, and I know you all have your own, but my favorite is FEAR, forgetting everything's all right. But in the fear inventory, the book says, we write down our list of fears, and it says we ask ourselves why we had these fears. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Why, yes, it is. Self-reliance fails me. And so when I'm faced with indecision or confused, I know that God is not confused. So I have to be able to back off. That's the action, is to truly back off. And for me, back off is say that, I'm not going to think about it again until the 25th. And if I do think about it again, which I will between now and the 25th, I just say, oh yeah, I gave that to you, God. I don't have to think about that or talk about that. And what I do is, we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we could help. And in the book, it doesn't say what it says at the bottom of the page in working with others. It says our only aim is to be helpful is our only aim. To be helpful is our only aim. And it doesn't say just for alcoholics and addicts. It doesn't say to be helpful to alcoholics and addicts. It says to be helpful. And so if I need, to back off, I have to look at work. Am I being helpful? Am I bringing an attitude of the St. Francis prayer to my job? Sometimes not. But that's for me. That's the action for me. And this is practice. That's why I don't beat myself up anymore, because it's not the voice of God, man. And how can I be happy, joyous, and free if I'm bogged down with shame, guilt, and fear? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. Michael, come on in, Michael.
Hi, thanks, Young. Michael, recovered addict. Thank you very much for your share, Sherri. I truly believe that was definitely God's work. I seen you on the meeting there, and I was like, oh, Liv will be gutted, Sherri's on the meeting. And then you jumped in talking. I was like, oh, I've got to tell Liv. And then I told Liv, and straight away she was pinged on, and there was that love connection, and it was wonderful. So yeah, thanks. My question is, you talked about, you touched on 10, 11, 12, and you talked about going right back to step one and how it's none of your business, and you can find yourself like powerless over your reaction, over the ism. Once you see that, do you then work your way back up the steps, to 2 to 3 and so on until you find yourself in 10 and 11? And thanks again.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Michael. And this is exactly what I mean. They're my family, man. And Danny's about to come in, and they're my family, and we've never met in person, but the fellowship of the Spirit is beautiful. It's love, and it's family, and it's relationship. Okay. So yes, when I realized that, because the thing is that I came in here speaking victimese. And everything in my life I was a victim of. I was a victim of my circumstances. They did this, she said that, my parents this, all these reasons. And I don't know if any of you guys, and I know, I try not to name drop, but man, I can't take credit for this, and I don't want to just be a storyteller. I know a lot of you guys know Earl H., but Earl H. got here, and prior to him getting clean and sober, he was on a plane with his family, had a plane crash, and he laid on the ground and watched all of them die. And he couldn't help them because he was too injured. And That guy could have, and I love that guy, man, and I've known him forever, but he always is the same. He's always about the solution, the message, the principles, the steps, the book. And here's why. He could have easily taken that tragic incident and been a victim for the rest of his life. And he could have blamed God. You know, God took away and never ever had a relationship with God, but he's beautiful and spiritual and humble because he has a relationship with God, because he got sober after that. And so the thing for me, I guess, is, you know, we admit, you know, I don't, honesty is not just about not lying. It's about telling the truth. And the telling the truth is we admit. So I admit that I'm powerless over my ism and not people, places, and things. I admit that it's none of my business. It's God's business. You know, I admit that I don't need to rely on that person for a job or for money or for whatever, that God is my reliance. You know, and so I have no idea what the question was, Michael, but yes, I do work my way back up into the steps. And I will tell you this, I can usually run 1 through 3 because 1 through 3 brings me back to God. The reason I'm powerless is because I have no power and God has all the power. And here's the other thing about the power. There's one who has all power. May you find him where? Now. So as soon as I admit that I have no power, I'm back in the now. Because if I think I have power, I'm in the past or in the future. And then when I realize that belief is not reliance, and then I have to come to believe that God can restore me to sanity, step 2 is a prayer. God, please restore me to sanity. God, please restore me to sanity. And then when I get to step 3, okay, God, you can have it because she's yours. She's not mine. She's driving me crazy as hell, but she's not mine. And then I'm back into not minding my own business. Now, if it's something that's really eating my lunch or something that is really disturbing, and I think I went over the things, the only reason I'm disturbed is because I'm not getting my way, because I'm not trusting God, or because I'm not minding my own business. Those are the only reasons I'm disturbed. And so when I can figure out which of those reasons it is, then I give it back to God and I move on with my life. So I don't have to run all the way back through. Now, do I practice 10, 11, and 12? Of course I do. But I don't want to live. People say I live in 10, 11, and 12. I could never live in 10, 11, and 12, you see, because 10, 11, and 12 is about me. I take inventory. I continue to take inventory. I pray. I meditate. Even though it says conscious contact with God, it's still me taking action. Step 12, I work with others. But I need to go all the way back and remember that it's none of my business, that I have no power. That if my life is unmanageable or my head is unmanageable, because I don't have a drinking problem today, I have a thinking problem today. And if my head is unmanageable, it's because I'm trying to manage. So therefore, I have to get on my knees and fire myself as manager. It's none of my business, God. It's your business. And I fire myself. I'm trying to control it. You know why? Because of the 3 reasons that I said. Because I want my own way. Somebody said to me, oh, I'm doing so much better with my daughter. I'm loving her and I'm just being non-judgmental and not condescending. And I just feel like I'm really changing. And I said, you are, but I also want you to remember the reason you feel so good about this is because she's acting the way you want her to. She's not out there doing the things that she was doing that upset you. She's being chill right now. And that's why you feel good. And so, see, I can't base my feelings on what somebody else does because the chapter is how it works, not how it feels. I didn't feel like going to an in-person meeting Monday night. I had pajama bottoms on and everything. I was not going. It was cold and rainy. And then I heard my sponsor's voice. She's so rude, man. So I got up and went to the meeting. You know why? Because I also heard my own voice saying it's not how it feels. It's how it works. So get up and go, you know, I had to go even though I didn't feel like it. That's the thing. So I hope that answers your question, Michael. If not, call me later. I don't even know what the question was.
Thank you, Michael. Danny and Ian, last two. If you could be quick, that'd be great. Danny, happy birthday! Come on in.
Thank you, Young. Thanks so much. Hi, guys. Danny Addict. Sherri, thanks so much. So good to hear you. So good to see you. Much love. So powerful. Even like answering those questions, just like, wow. Absolutely loved it. My question was also going to be about belief and not reliance, but I suppose what I'm going to ask is, you spoke about the challenges you faced in recovery, Sherri, and, really powerful experience. And how was them challenges, well, you could look at them as challenges, but how has them difficult times helped you to see where you've been believing and not relying, and how have they helped you move into reliance? Thank you. Much love.
Thank you, Danny and Young. It's my fault, everybody. It's my fault that we're late. Their questions are great. Okay, let me say this as quick as I can. So I'm 23 years sober, and I'm living in this apartment complex in Nashville, and my dog bit somebody. And the manager's office called me, and within 3 days I was homeless because they put us out. And that was a big, big surprise. And so it takes a lot of money and a lot of whatever to get into an apartment complex, and I couldn't do that right away. So I went to a hotel, but there were some nights, guys, that I slept in the car. But the thing is, the difference between then and now is now I know I'm not a victim. My dog bit someone. That is a fact. It's not a story. It's not the world is against me. It's not God is against me. God didn't make my dog bite the dude. I'm not a victim. And there were nights I slept in the car. And I slept in the car in peace, and it was cold and it was the winter. Not all the time. A lot of people sponsored hotel rooms and things like that. And it was just a beautiful experience all the way around. But I remember one night it snowed. I didn't even know it was supposed to snow. And I woke up and the car was covered with snow like an igloo. And I said, oh my God, it's beautiful. And my dog is an Alaskan Malamute, and his big butt was in the back seat. He had more room than I did. And I said, King, wake up. God made you some snow. Let's go outside and play, buddy, because he loves snow. And that's the difference between then and now. You see, it's mostly about being a victim or not being a victim. It's cannot, it's not will not. And that is a choice to be a victim or not. That is the spiritual principle of honesty. Honesty is not just not lying. It's telling the truth. What's the truth? You know what I always say? Stick to the facts. Because my mind just makes stuff up. Thanks, Danny. And happy birthday, man. Happy birthday. 3 years. Brilliant.
Thanks, Danny. Last up, Ian. Come on in, Ian.
Hiya, good evening. I'm Ian. I'm an addict. Thanks for meeting, guys. Thanks to everyone who's done service. Thanks for your share. Really got loads of identification. My questioning is when you spoke about obviously how you was before you came to recovery and stuff, and some of the stuff that you got up to, how have you sort of changed? How have you sort of changed them behaviours from what they were to what they are now? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. I'll tell you, I haven't changed at all, but God has changed me. And that's the difference. I was 18 years sober before somebody told me this isn't behavior management, that step 6 and 7 is God's job, that I have moral and philosophical convictions galore, that I wanted to be a good person, but I was still treating everybody like crap because I wasn't getting my own way, or I wasn't trusting God, or I wasn't minding my own business. I was treating people like crap. And that's what happened. And the thing is that I didn't change myself at all, that God has changed me. I remember I was walking my dog, and I was walking through, and there was an empty box on the ground, and it was a big box, and I just kicked it. It was empty completely, and no one was around, and I just kicked it because I was just trying to walk through with my dog, and someone from the 3rd floor screamed at the top of her lungs at me like a movie you would watch, completely like Psycho. Now, I'm from New York, and I'm Italian, and if you don't know what that means, it means we come out fighting, and we come out yelling, and we come out defending ourselves. And I wanted to whip around and do all that, but I didn't. What I did was I kept walking. And I had the thought that said, what a terrible day she must be having to have to act like that. And then I went on to say, God, please bless her today and give her whatever she needs. And that's my prayer. I don't pray anything specific for people. I pray, God, give them whatever they need, because I don't know what people need. I don't know what I need either. I pray, God, give me what I need, because I don't know, but I know you know. And so as far as the change, the psychic change, it's a psychic change, but it doesn't come from me. It comes from a higher power. And so as long as I keep the higher power, and not lower powers, the higher power, then I'm going to continue to change. One of my prayers is, God, please soften me, because I came here hard-headed and hard-hearted. And I think that I've prayed it too much, because I tend to weep at everything now. But it's because it's such a beautiful program and such a beautiful life. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.